All right, folks, we just wrapped up that Fight Club 3 panel. Absolutely amazing stuff. Right now, we're going to get into our first creators panel of the night. We got a full hour with these guys. It's a murderer's row of independent creators, and leading the charge, talking about how to publish your first book, is our friend Rylend Grant. Rylend, welcome back to the stream. Oh, he's come prepared for songs. It's sing along time. I'm gonna hang out and because I was asked to man some screen share, but I'll turn my mic and my camera off and get out of your way. I'm gonna bring everybody on for you.
Excellent. David Booher, Frank Gogol, Sean Lewis. Where's David Pepose? There we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 37th consecutive all-male panel at the Mainframe Comic. I wrote a little song to commemorate.
We got some ladies tomorrow, Rylend. Sundays for the ladies.
I wrote a song here to commemorate the Sausage Festive occasion, if you guys will bear with me. You ready? Men have feelings too. May I share mine with you? The inner child cries from deep within. Nurture me, brothers, we all can win. 'Cause men have feelings too. May I share mine with you? Ooh, hello, brothers. Let's all join hands and sing Kumbaya.
That was great. I feel like the panel just peaked already.
Yeah. Sorry, guys.
Oh, my.
Yeah, I decided to fuck with everybody. I got a little antsy sitting there waiting on Chuck Palahniuk. Can you believe they moved us back 7 minutes for that guy? What in the hell? He's great. He's one of my heroes. It's kind of cool being, Kevin Eastman was on right after me last time, and Chuck Palahniuk right before me. So that's kind of amazing. How you guys doing?
Pepose and I got into a fight in the waiting room, so that's where we're starting.
I mean, a fight implies that it was fair on both sides.
So literally,
you're the only one.
Literally, everyone is coming in hot right now. I love it. Okay, so I should say hi to all the people in TV streaming land in the Matrix now. Let me set this up a little bit. My name is Rylend Grant. You shouldn't listen to me, but if you decide that you want to listen to me, maybe it's because I have for, 12 plus years been a screenwriter in Hollywood. I've written for J.J. Abrams and Ridley Scott and John Woo and Luc Besson and a bunch of other people. A few years back, I swerved into the comic book lane. I wrote a book called Aberrant, which is a sort of love letter to paranoid action thrillers that won a Ringo Award, was nominated for a couple of others. And most recently, I did a kind of like kick you in the face superhero noir called Banjax that was on a bunch of 10 best lists this year. So this is, as Drew set up, this is the Bringing Your First Book to Life panel. This comes from, sort of my experience of, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I was like a lot of you, where I was sitting in panels at Comic Cons, and I was sitting, behind my computer listening to streams and trying to figure out how to do this. And it took me a long while to kind of gather the right information. And once I had it, I used it to get my books published, and I felt guilty kind of hoarding it for myself. And so I decided that the right thing to do is to pay it forward and to make that information available to everybody. So what I like to do with these, whether they're on streams or at cons, is I like to get a bunch of people who are kind of smarter than me and better at me than this, and corner them and ask them all of the questions that were in my heart and in your heart. So what I did was I went out and I got, 4 of my, what's that?
So you got us. You settled for us.
I settled for you guys. 4 of my favorite creators. These guys all did books that I was just crazy about the last couple of years, and so they will impart knowledge to you. Why don't we go around and let's start? I don't know if you guys are probably looking at the same screen I am, but we'll go clockwise. So Booher, Gogol, Sean, Pepose, and then back to me. Don't get into the story yet. Just introduce yourself. This is my book. These are my qualifications, and then let's kick it on back to me, and I'll set the next thing up. So go ahead, Dave.
All right. My name is David Booher, and I guess it's hard to follow up Rylend, but I wrote a book and co-created a book called Canto for IDW. I happen to have a copy right here. It came out in 2019, and the trade just came out. It turns out on the very last new comic book day that we had on March 25th. So we slipped. It was like Indiana Jones. We slipped it under the door as it was closing. We've got a lot more planned for it, but yeah, I did that. I've been writing for quite a long time, screenwriting and TV writing. I'm trying to chase Rylend down with his credits, but did a couple of comics for Vault Comics in 2018, I think 2017, and that's where I am now, in my house, like everybody.
And if you haven't read Canto, it's incredible. It's one of the better books I've read in the last 5 or 10 years. So highly recommended. Frank, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Yes, cool. All good.
I'm Frank Gogol. I wrote a few things. Grief was my first book. Came out a couple years ago. The book you guys are all going to probably know me from, Dead End Kids, came out last year. And then I've got a new book coming out sometime this year, hopefully, depending on how things go. No Heroine. And I am the probably least qualified person to be here. I wrote my first comic book script 4 years ago this month, and I have no other credits whatsoever to my name. So that's it.
Nice. All right. And again, I'm not going to sit here and recommend every single one of these books. I only brought on great books. Frank's book is Lights Out and Killer. And that's huge coming from me because, Frank and I are like mortal. Is it Nemesis? Is that the plural? We are nemesis or nemesis. What's that?
Blood feud.
Blood feud, yeah. So Frank and I are in the middle of a blood feud, kind of like a 90s era rap feud. And so if I say his book is good, I am very grudgingly saying it, but it's incredible. So please get Dead End Kids. Sean, go ahead.
Sure. So I am Sean Lewis. I don't have a book on me. I've done 4 books.
You have some nice paintings back there.
yeah. Here's
Did
the
you
art
do those?
of my books. These are the art from all my comics. You should buy them.
Incredible.
They're fucking great.
Hayden is throwing 100 miles an hour now.
So new. This is from Bliss. It comes out this summer. Yeah, so I've done Saints, The Few, Coyotes, and Thumbs, all at Image Comics, and was set to publish a new book called Bliss at Image Comics that'll come out when books start to come out again. And then I've done a couple of books over at Aftershock, and I'm doing a new book over at Vault as well. So yeah, that's me.
That's it?
That's it. That's all I got.
All right, Pepose, can you beat that?
Yeah, I'm David Pepose. I'm the writer of Spencer and Locke. Right here, 5-time Ringo Award nominated series, as well as its hit sequel, Spencer and Locke 2. And my recent book just came out, the trade came out in February, Going to the Chapel, which got a nice little endorsement from one Patton Oswalt, if you can see that. But yeah, I've been writing for Action Lab Comics for a few years now. I have a few more books in various stages and pipelines for a few other publishers that we haven't announced yet. But yeah, I got my start as a crime reporter, so I kind of came at this not from a film angle, but from a very different angle. But yeah, I'm really happy to be here.
Nice. Okay, so that is everybody. These are your players tonight. Let's jump right in, guys. I don't know if we're gonna be cut 5 minutes short or what, but we'll see. We'll just go until Drew boots us out of this place. So let's go back to the beginning. I want to the sort of origin story. We're gonna focus in on the idea. Now, any comic book endeavor is going to be years of your life and perhaps tens of thousands of dollars of your hard-earned money, right? You do not commit to just any idea, right? It has to be the right idea. And so I want to know in general what you think what you think makes the right idea. What makes an idea worth like years of your life and tens of thousands of dollars? And then more specifically, what made Kanto the right idea? What made Spencer and Locke the right idea, and so on and so on. And then sort of start, how you start to kind of nurture that idea just a little bit, short and sweet. Let's not get into the whole like how we're prepping for publishers and all that stuff just yet. I will veer into that lane in just a little bit, but focusing on the idea here. What is the right idea, and why was your idea the right idea, David?
Which, me?
Yeah, David Moore. Sorry, yeah, got so many David. Yeah,
that's fine. Well,
evil David.
Evil David. I like that.
Nice.
So, and I write all ages comics. That's great. I love it.
Yes.
So the way Kanto came about was my co-creator and the artist on it, Drew Zucker, who's amazing. Hey, Drew, if you're listening. I wanted to work with him, and he sent me what you're seeing now on the screen share is actually the initial pitch that we eventually put together. But even before that came about, we wanted to work together on something else. And it didn't work out. And then he sent me a concept drawing for what would become Kanto. It was this little tin man. And I have to tell you, when I got it in my inbox, it took me about half a second to email him back and say, I don't know who this character is. I don't know what his backstory is or what his name is or anything, what story we're going to tell, but we are going to tell it, because it was just such a compelling character design for me. And he had an idea, and we took it and we sort of worked it, revamped it, and created the story that eventually became Kanto. But the genesis of the story was the character design that I thought was so both attractive from a reader's perspective as well as very commercially appealing. I thought a lot of people would find a lot of reasons to really like him. And so that's where the story initially began. It was with a concept drawing that we built around.
That's so interesting. So, I mean, you didn't even know what the idea was. You didn't know what the story was yet. It was just, you were so taken by this drawing, and this character just brought everything to life in your mind. That's
yeah. So as writers, we just work so much in the dark and alone, writing stories. And my experience with Kanto has been that with that collaboration, right at the very first step, it's just it made for such a rich story that we both brought our experience and personalities to, versus me creating something and saying, okay, now you design it. If I would have told him, create this tin man who's looking for a heart, it would have looked different than the one that he brought. So I loved that, going about this particular story in that way. Of course, you can go, approach stories in lots of different ways, but this is how that actually what's appearing right now on the screen is the inks to the first image that he sent me.
Interesting. Yeah. So, I'm sure writing is often this very, I lock myself in my cave. I'm in it right now, and just sort of, toil away. And then, an artist doesn't see anything for months, and, it's a very lonely pursuit. But that's interesting. I mean, the collaboration begins right off the bat. I know Sean has had a lot of similar experiences. I would say maybe Boogie Bentley from Comic Cast asks, is this the 2020 Comic Cast Guest of the Year panel? I'm repping the cast on here. I gotta represent. But yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Frank, what do you think about that idea question?
Whew, I'm definitely not gonna. I'm gonna be the atypical one here. Usually I'll get an idea and like it'll just kind of like sit in my brain and kind of claw to come out. Like it's just in there and it needs to come out. And that's how I know that like an idea is worth pursuing. Like if I don't, like I get a lot of ideas and I'm just like, oh, and then like I'll forget about it. So the ones that stick around, I always know are like the ones that are meaningful to me in some way, even if I don't know why. And it usually is like an interesting character beat that like, just popped in my head, or a question. Like Dead End Kid started with a question. Like, does the terrible stuff that happens to you as a kid end up defining who you end up becoming, or do you have any control over it? It's kind of like a determinism question. So like for me, it's just about, what stays on my radar, in spite of all the other noise that life throws in my head. And then, just like everyone else is going to say, I'm sure you just pound it out. Like you just put it down on paper and you get it out and you make it real. Like it's not as hard as it feels. in practice.
I like the idea that you're starting with big big dramatic questions, big thematic questions. I mean, I think that that's very good advice. I think that too often the thematics come very late in the process for people, and that usually ends up being usually ends up being a really shitty experience when they kind of tack them on at the end. The idea of the seeds of the idea being those thematics and those big questions, I think is a good thing. Where you at, Sean?
So, sorry, there's things going on in the private chat that are making me laugh.
I'm watching the live comments, so I'm not.
That's okay. In terms of, I would say I'm somewhere in between both of those. Like, collaboration. My background's theater, so collaboration's like really heavy. So a lot of times it is coming from the artist. With Ben and Saints, we were literally working on a theater production, and we were like joking around at one point, painting a set about what would we make a comic book about, and we were just like, what if we just like redid the Bible told by like atheists, and they were the X-Men, and we just kind of like ran with that idea. But I think like kind of what Frank's saying, like a lot of times for me, it starts from me presenting a challenge to myself. Like the Few was very much, I found Hayden's art. So this is where it's the mix. I found Hayden's art and I was like, this is fucking so cool. Like I got to work with this guy. I got to figure out a story that works for him. And what do I want to write about? And I was like, I kind of want to do like a big sci-fi action movie that's really, really insanely quiet. That just like, and then because I didn't feel like I had really seen that. And so like each of the books I've done has kind of been a new challenge. So the Coyote started very much with finding Caitlin. It's usually I find an artist and I get really excited by them. And I saw Caitlin's work and it was very similar. I was like, oh, her expressiveness and emotion is unlike other artists I've worked with. And then I was like, okay, what's the next challenge? And I'm like, well, I haven't done anything in like a Neil Gaiman magic realism type world. So what's the story that I do about that also deals with like current politics? That's the challenge. So it's usually both. I usually find an artist who I'm really blown away by and I have to write a story for them. And then as I'm working on a story for them, I start going like, all right, so I don't get bored. Like what could I fail miserably at? Is kind of like really what I end up asking myself is like, how could I really fuck this up? And that's kind of the jump.
No, it's great. I feel like I'm missing stuff in the private chats. What was I going to say? I feel like I love this idea of finding a world that you sort of fall in love with and just having to kind of set I've experienced that before where I remember meeting musical artists and sort of falling in love with that and being like, I have to, there's a movie here. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm going to sit here and I'm going to listen to this music and I'm going to walk in this world until I figure out what the movie is. And that's interesting. I mean, you become this sponge, you sort of soak up all of this like greatness and then spill it into something,
Yeah. It kind of gets me out of my own bullshit, like at least for me, a lot of times when I'm like writing, I can get so down a rabbit hole that I'm not seeing all the holes I'm putting in it. And in a weird way, when like I have to enter their world first, it's weird. We start editing each other right from the get-go, which has worked.
I also love this idea. I mean, I'm so used to, okay, well, I have this finished story and now I need to find the right person to draw it and you never find the exact right person to draw it. You know what I'm saying? You find somebody who's good and then you have to kind of accept that, okay, well, this is going to be a little bit different than I had originally thought. And usually it ends up being much better. You know what I'm saying? Because again, I don't have a monopoly on this shit. Normally, I set the bar this high and they come in and set it higher. But the idea of seeing an artist sort of falling in love with that artist and being like, okay, well, I need to figure out how to use this person, like to give this person something that, that they're just going to knock out of the park. That's very interesting. Particularly you see that artist being kind of underutilized because there are a ton of them out there, right? Where you see an artist that is just throwing 100 miles an hour and like, they're playing fucking Little League, So that's interesting. And I mean, you've with Hayden and Caitlin, I mean, you've set the bar pretty high with your artists.
I got it really lucky. I found them on the same Facebook page on the same day. So like, that's never happening again.
Wow.
Like that's just never fucking happening again.
Yeah.
But
All right. So Pepose,
Yeah.
good David. What are your thoughts on this idea question?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, the thing that always sort of makes me decide whether or not I'm going to pursue an idea for long term or not. They talk about write about what you know, and I think that can be a little bit of misleading phrasing. But for me, it really helped with my first book, Spencer and Locke. I thought to myself at the time when I was deciding maybe I should write a book of my own, I thought, well, I don't know anything about anything except for comics. And that first felt really limiting. And then I realized, no, you could tell like a really interesting story that way. And I thought to myself, classic Frank Miller was really influential on me growing up as a reader. And I thought to myself, what would be the weirdest thing that I could throw against old school Frank Miller? And the light bulb kind of went off when I thought, oh, Bill Watterson's Calvin and Hobbes. What if Calvin and Hobbes grew up in Sin City? And that kind of became the genesis of my first book. And as I started writing it, though, I realized that saying write what you know, it doesn't mean what's your expertise. It means what's your experience, what's your personal lived in, point of view on things. For Spencer and Locke, it was very much, are we defined by our scars, or can we possibly transcend them? My series Going to the Chapel was all about romance and what does a happily ever after really look like. My next book, Grand Theft Astro, is about what happens when you feel like the world has passed you by and what would you do to get back on top. And these are sort of these very, if I can find that kind of very universal human question, to a story beyond just sort of the cool high concept. I mean, the high concept is why you show up, but that human question is why you stick around. And so I feel like if I can find that kind of human angle to the story, that usually keeps me more interested and excited and engaged. And that's the thing that keeps this story from going from just being a sprint to being sort of me going for the full marathon.
Interesting. So you're echoing some of the things that Frank said there, where it's you're starting out with these big dramatic questions, and
Yeah.
again, what is the equation I'm trying to solve with this thing? We're not strapping scenes together and strapping quippy lines of dialogue together. I'm trying to solve the Goodwill Hunting equation on the fucking blackboard with this thing, and what does that look like? I missed the question there. Simple Man's Comics says, when do we get an anthology collaboration with Gogol and Booher? I take offense to this question because
public pressure right now.
Well, you have three other creators here. I guess we don't get a spot, but any collaborations coming up, guys?
yeah, Dead End Canto.
Dead End Canto. Wow.
Canto Kids.
Canto Kids. Nice.
He goes so dark with it. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. It's all part of your evil plan.
David. He's the evil David.
I'm Middle David.
You're not even a David.
I feel like I should have asked
Frank.
I should have got David Schrader on this panel and David Avallone, and we could have just had the Davids panel. That's what I should have done.
I could have had my Friday night.
Yeah, literally, Mainframe came to me and said, "You can do whatever the hell you want." I should have had the fucking Davids panel. I mean, this is pretty good, but come on, who's the best David? Discuss.
And then like the windows just start disappearing slowly for the hour.
You can still do whatever you want. If you want me to send invites to Schrader and Avallone, we can kick whoever you want to kick off your panel.
Yeah,
don't deal, man.
Don't joke about that because Avallone will be on in about 10 seconds. I know him with his shaved head. Avallone went down to the cue ball. He looks brilliant. Yeah, it's awesome.
Okay.
We talked about head shaving and beard growing and all that stuff on my live stream. That was
he's here in spirit.
Anyway, yeah, you're in spirit. So we're getting off topic here. So okay, so
oh my gosh, David Avallone is in the live comments right now, and he said, "I'm for real."
Is he?
David.
Rock and roll. Nice. Hello, David Avallone. I love David Avallone. So we have established that we have the best idea since Why the Last Man. Whether it's Canto or Spencer and Locke or Dead End Kids or whatever, the few. So let's talk about. I want to talk about in general how you get your idea to a place where it's ready to show a publisher, but also how you specifically got your idea ready for a publisher. What format did it take place in? Were you sending art? What kind of pitch deck were you sending? There are a million different right answers to this. I want to hear how you guys got these things across the finish line, how you guys got these things into Eric Stevenson's hands, and so on and so on and so on. So why don't we go the other way? Pepose, why don't you hit us first?
Yeah, well, for Spencer and Locke, I did kind of the stripped down approach because I didn't know if that book was going to succeed. When the art came in, I felt really excited about it. Working with George Santiago Jr. and Jason Smith, I felt like I was going to pitch that thing to everybody out of spite. But Calvin and Hobbes meets Sin City. There's a lot of people who don't necessarily go for that. And so we started out with just the first 6 pages and cover. And that is exactly the first 6 pages and cover of issue 1 that Action Lab eventually picked up. But it's not to say, I chopped that thing all over town, and people, they that kind of concept, it's like the Evel Knievel stunt jump of first books. You're either, whether you succeed or fail, you will be doing so loudly. Because Calvin and Hobbes is rightly, one of the most sacred comics out there. I distinctly remember a top 5 publisher telling me it was the best pitch that he'd never publish, which I wear that as a badge of honor. But yeah, it's a lot of knocking on doors. There's a lot of failure and rejection involved. I always consider rejection to be my rocket fuel, because that's sort of my first initial gut check. I can sort of ask myself, well, is this just the book is not working out, or this wasn't the best place to pitch it? And you can kind of help figure out where to go from there. But yeah, I think finding the right collaborators to work with was kind of my big thing, and it's always sort of been my big thing for any projects I've worked on since, is you're competing against a lot of people. There are people pitching 24/7. They're probably pitching a lot faster than I do. So you have to make a book that's like undeniable. You have to turn in something that is so good. And this is where I used to disagree with Rylend a lot about this, and I've really since come to his line of thinking on this.
I'm always right.
Rylend was right. If you can get a full issue in the can, if you can get a full mini in the can, it's sometimes it's a little more self-selecting. There are some publishers who want to be involved in that development process, but I talked with Frank about this at a con a few months ago, and he was right on the money. Where if you make that first issue, or if you make that full mini, and then you pitch it, it's the only way you're going to get a book done on your own terms. And so I've been a big believer in that if you can bank as much product as you can, it is a little high risk, high reward, but if you really feel strongly about your book being done in a certain way, I think that's the best way to go about pitching it.
Well, and here's the thing: is the publishers that are going to want to pair you with an artist. I think of the Aftershocks and the Booms, and
you're not going to walk on there.
You're not going to walk right in there. I had to win a Ringo Award before those guys started, talking to me. So, and I think that's pretty common. And so, yeah, I think the more you can eliminate doubt in the publisher's mind, whatever. You send 6 grade pages in a proposal. If they're good, you'll get bites. However, there are always going to be questions. Well, okay, can they deliver us 4 issues or 10 issues or whatever? You deliver a completed issue or a completed trade or whatever. It is or it isn't. It's right there. You know what I'm saying? So if you believe in your work and your artists and everything, then that package is undeniable. And it may exclude you at a few publishers, but you're going to be in a stronger position at the other ones. I believe that. So Sean, I think your approach is not dissimilar, but I'm sure you have a lot more to add.
Yeah, a lot more to add, but also at times I feel like I'm the worst person for this question because the way it worked out was just really odd. But I subscribed to the full issue partially because we didn't know what we were doing. I Ben and I on Saints, neither of us knew how you got into comics at all or what you even did. So we started out just making it for fun, and we were like, let's just make the whole issue. Like, it was making us laugh when we were talking about the concept. So
David Avallone!
Whoa!
Whoa! Shaved head of David Avallone, everybody.
That's like mirror universe
Oh,
Avallone.
so many David.
I can't even.
Love it so
There's no
much.
facial hair. There's no
Yeah.
hair. There's no hair
It's great.
anywhere.
I feel like it's like Booher and then me and now
That's
Avallone. It's like
Yeah.
we're the three evolutions of the Pokemon, but we're each
Yeah.
losing hair.
This isn't even my final form, guys.
For the uninitiated, David Avallone is the co-creator of Drawing Blood with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles legend Kevin Eastman, and he also writes Betty Page and Elvira for Dynamite. So Avallone,
Rylend.
one of my heroes, one of my good friends in comics, and we're happy to have you, man. I'm sure you have a lot to say here. But Sean, where are you at? I'm sorry we all
That's
got
okay.
it.
Basically, Ben and I didn't know what we were doing. We made a full issue, honestly, just for ourselves. And then when Ben finished the art for it, I read it and I was like, I think this is actually pretty good, but I had no idea how you got anyone to read it or how you submitted. So I just sent like blank emails to everybody, like even places that now I look back and Marvel and DC like would never do this. Why am I sending blank emails? But one of those cold emails was to Image Comics, and Eric Stevenson wrote back 3.5 months later and was like, hey, what's your phone number? And I gave him my phone number. He called up and he was like, do you guys want to do Saints at Image? And we just obviously were like, yes, we'll do it at Image. And then the way I've continued to pitch books, it's changed a little bit because my relationship there now has been a lot longer. The Few was the same thing. We did a full first issue and turned it in. And with Coyotes, we did a full first issue and turned it in. But never did pitch decks. And with Image, honestly, like with Saints, like never did pitch decks or even like Bibles or outlines. Like a lot of times all we had at that point was just the first issue. And just kind of giving it in, and then
Just the
sometimes
first
Eric would
issue.
call. Just the first issue. I mean, Eric would call me and he would talk to me about it, and I'd be like, well, this is the type of stuff I want to do with it. I mean, I will say things that definitely helped me is I had a background writing in other forms that I think made Eric think I wasn't a lunatic or just like, I mean, I've done some stuff for This American Life, and I've been a playwright pretty consistently and professionally for most of my adult life. So I think those things made Eric trust a little bit more, obviously, that it's like, okay, I think he knows how to continue to write this story, not just the first issue. But yeah, that's all we ever turned in. I never had to turn in a Bible for a pitch until Aftershock. And that was weird for me. I was like, fuck, I got to think about the whole thing, which I had never had to do before.
Screw you guys.
Yeah. So, yeah.
All right, Frank, you are a hardliner on this, and I'm interested to hear what you have to say about it.
I'm not sure I'm the person to even talk about this. I have never pitched, never once.
Interesting.
So my first book was pitched for me. Andy Schmidt from Comics Experience had sent it over to Source Point Press on my behalf without telling me, and they picked it up. And when I met Travis McIntyre, the editor-in-chief of Source Point Press, at New York Comic Con, I was talking to him, and about halfway through the conversation, he says, "What's your name?" It's like, "Oh, Frank Gogol." He goes, "Oh yeah, we're going to pick up your book." I was like, "No, you're having a stroke or something." He's like, "It's called Grief, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." It's like, I think now I'm the one having a stroke. So I didn't pitch Grief, and then I did Dead End Kids, sort of soup to nuts, got it done, and then brought it to Source Point. And like David and Sean were saying, it's kind of like the more you can offer a publisher, the easier it is for them to say yes because there's less risk. But like David said, it's higher risk for you too. So Dead End Kids was lettered and ready to go to print when I showed it to them, and it was just a real quick conversation. Like essentially they said, "Do you believe in this book, the same way you believed in Grief?" And I was like, "Yeah, this is a better book. It's a way better book." And they said, "Okay, we'll do it." And then my third book that's coming out this year, No Heroine, I didn't pitch either. I was just sitting with Travis at a convention one day. And I was like, I'm thinking I'm going to write a Buffy book. He's like, "Tell me about it." And I told him like what I was thinking. He was like, "Yeah, we'll do that." So like, I mean, it's not, I don't know that I have any practical advice other than that networking pays off and like building relationships and trust. And these are things that kind of, they fall like dominoes, and the dominoes get a little bit bigger each time. If you prove yourself on one book, getting that second book becomes that much easier, and the third book gets easier than that, and so on. And to the point where eventually maybe they start asking you for stuff. Like, we're going to do Dead End Kids 2, and they asked me to do that, and I didn't. So that's about as far away from a pitch as you can get. So yeah, I don't have any 7 pages and a cover type advice, but definitely like build those relationships and make products that you think are undeniable, like things that people can't say no to, and have them as far and away done as you can.
Well, I mean, I think we're starting to see this thread go through here, where it's like you build these strong relationships, and it becomes a lot easier to do this. I mean, I remember I have a similar story, Frank, to you with Banjax. Aberrant came out, and it was a good book for Action Lab, and I remember sending them Banjax. And you're used to you send out these email queries to publishers and stuff like that, and you're used to whatever a week, 2 weeks you get a response or something like that. Maybe you don't get a response at all. I remember sending it to Brian Seaton, the first issue of Banjax, who is the CEO of Action Lab, and I sent him it in an email, and I think 8 minutes later he responded to the email being like, "This is fucking awesome. How do we publish it?" You know what I'm saying? And it was just, I mean, he I gave him a finished book. He looked at it. He knew me, and he knew what he was betting on. And so, and that never would have been the case like a year before, when Brian didn't know me and I hadn't proven myself to Brian. So I think that's really interesting. People get to know you, and then the doors open. So Evil David, you are, I feel like, the outlier in this conversation thus far, because you started out with a pitch deck and pages and stuff like that, correct?
Right. Yes. So it actually started way before that, because I've been going to the cons and stuff. For this is the advice that I give all new creators who are trying to get out there. I've been going to San Diego Comic-Con and other cons for like a decade. So I was meeting people, I was meeting editors, didn't have anything to pitch. I was just like meeting and networking, because unlike good David, rejection is horrible. It's like jet fuel, but it's like on your face. For me. So I was like, I don't want to just throw. I love Canto so much. I don't want to just throw it into the abyss, the wood chipper, and see what happens. So I spent years before even Canto existed, like networking and figuring out who are the people I need to know and who know me. So when I have that thing, I have a list, 5 or 10 people that I want to send it to and say, this is what I'm working on. And so at cons, I would have casual conversations about, this, and I'd have some visuals on my phone, and I would be showing editors, and they would react positively to it. And I say, I'm not ready yet. It's not quite ready, but as soon as it is, I'll send it to you. And that's how we ended up getting to IDW. And it's kind of a funny story, because I think, are we calling him Medium David now? Avallone?
Well, Medium
I
David
feel
was
evil, so I think evil is
Yeah. Medium David is Gogol, and Evilist David is Avallone. I mean, he's got like the super evil.
All right.
He's drinking a White Russian. He's got a suit on. He's got the Lex Luthor look going on. I think it's pretty.
I think you're like Mirror Universe, Dave.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! So
totally. I've been replaced by my universe double. Anyway, sorry, David. You were saying
Evilist David. I went to Baltimore Comic-Con like 2 or 3 years ago, and I had a table across from Ben Bishop. And we got to be buddies within 5 minutes. And he was he was the one who knew, who connected us with an editor at IDW. And I thought, sweet, we're going to get personalized attention for the pitch for Canto. This is going to be great. And I get an email back from the editor who says, yeah, this is great. I'll send it to the committee. And I just had the picture of the wood chipper. I was like, I spent all this time like personally networking, and here we are back in the committee in the slush pile. Yeah, but when we pitched it to them, I think they actually want, for these kind of pitches, a full issue done, at least inks. So Drew had done all of the inks for the first issue, but we actually decided to do that before we went to IDW, because we loved the story so much that we were going to move forward no matter where it ended up. So we sent it over there, and it was months. It was like 2 or 3 months. We were almost signing with another publisher, and they came back and said, we want to do it. And we flipped the table, and we went to IDW.
I about that attitude of we're going to do this regardless, that is the golden attitude to have in all of show business.
Yep.
People will jump on board a moving train in a way they will not if you come to them and say, I need your permission to do this thing.
Yep.
And there have been times, I mean, I've produced a couple of movies. There have been times I've been like, we're supposed to start shooting in a month and I don't actually have the money, but we're just going to pretend that's going to happen. And that works better than not announcing the start date of your movie. You know
And
what I
I
mean?
think and it goes back to my fear of rejection and failure. It's if I believe in the book so much that we're going to move forward, those rejections don't hurt because they're just not seeing what I know is there. And you know, we're all on the other side of that anxiety where we all have very successful books, critically, you know, acclaimed books where we can look back on those moments and say, we were right. Trust our instincts when we have something that we believe is going to be successful. You know, come on that train because it's moving.
My litmus test has always been if I wouldn't self-publish this thing out of spite, it's probably not worth me spending time pitching it. Because it's like if you don't love the book, you can't sell it to anybody else. Nobody's going to love your book as much as you do, so you better love it to death.
Yeah, I didn't have Rylend's success trying to be a big studio writer, and I spent a lot of time writing draft after draft for free for studio executives who promised me, no, this is the one that's going to sell. And after like years of doing that, I went, you know what? I'm no longer to write anything that I can't produce myself for under $100,000. Not that I have $100,000 lying around, but like it had to be something I was willing to actually put my money where my mouth was and do. And that was the same thing with Drawing Blood. We pitched that at a couple of places and we didn't like the deal and we self-published because, you know, and I said this when I was talking to Rylend just a little while ago that, you know, if you don't like the deal, if you don't think what you're going to get from the publisher is more than a bug in the upper left-hand corner, you know, there's not a lot to be said for it. You know, it's great to be with a reputable publisher. It's great to be towards the front of the phone book that is the previews magazine. But if you have to do it yourself and be at the back, that works too, man.
That is good advice. So I think a natural progression here is, I mean, we are talking about pre-apocalypse pitching, right? We have been for about 45 minutes now. The shit has hit the fan. I mean, we are at this online Comic-Con right now because the shit has hit the fan in the comics business. The business is burning, right? The walls are on fire. A lot of people are hitting the reset button. People are in danger of shuttering and all that stuff. And it's scary and it's horrible. The business is going to look very different when it comes back, and how, you know, and when the fuck is it going to come back? That's a big question. So I guess general question, you know, to the panel, and just let's make this a polite free for all. If you guys can handle that, I don't know if you can. But so how does pitching look different after all this? Once we're back up and running, where are we at?
I have not pitched a direct market floppy single issue series. I've had conversations about book market because that's still working in graphic novels and that sort of thing. So,
I mean, I've spoken with a couple of people about sort of outstanding pitches. And I think kind of the general lay of the land is most publishers are, if they're not furloughed, they're working on the stuff that they had immediately committed to, but their long-term plans are still a little bit in flux. And so, I've sort of taken this opportunity, while in quarantine. I'm just trying to get ahead. I think that's the best thing that creators can do is, knowing that it's going to be a while before, you're probably not pitching for 2021 anymore. You're probably pitching for, for 2022, maybe even 2023, possibly even 2024 at this rate. And I feel like what we were saying earlier about having as much of your book together as possible, so it's the least amount of risk for a publisher. I think people are going to be more risk averse than ever, and so giving them the best pitch you possibly can once the dust settles is, I think, the best way to go.
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo Dave on that. Like lines at every publisher are getting shrunk right now. Like that's just fact. That's just fact.
It was already happening pre-apocalypse, and
it was happening, but even more so now. And absolutely, like I think it's more than fair to say you're not pitching for 2021. Definitely not. Like those books are already like on the move and going. Those teams are already put together. I think the best thing you can do right now, especially if you are not already in the business to some degree, like haven't had a book out, I think you've got to be frank. Like I think you've got to. I don't know you, Frank, but I think the idea of just like I'm making my whole book, I'm figuring out how to do it, I'm putting it out on my own terms. Like I think that's the way. And I think if you can figure out an interesting way of distributing it, this is a good moment for that, because the truth is like even when it comes back, if it is 2022, God, 2024 makes me want to cry. But like even if it is 2022, the thing is you've missed basically a 2-year cycle of people getting to know your work beyond a pitch. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have a book or a full thing that you can show them at the end of that, you're going to be competing with a ton of people who have books out already right now, some of which are critically acclaimed, who haven't gotten to put a book out for a year or two, right? Who can already turn and go like, yeah, but I did this thing at Vault or Aftershock or Image in 2018, 2019, and you can read all of it right now collected, and you'll be going, I got this pitch, there's a mouse, he's on Mars, and they're going to be like, it sounds great, but I don't, we're going to go with this over here.
The other advice that I just got from an editor was talking about digital comics, not like digital and print, something that's going to be in print, but just creating digital comics now, and in particular, something that might reflect, importantly, what's happening in 2020, like sci-fi, near future sci-fi, but what could be coming down the pike in 2021 as far as what our world is going to look like. What is next spring going to look like for our everyday lives, and folding that into a story that you can publish digitally with artists who are looking for work is, I think, a great opportunity to get your work out there in some format while the printers are down, while distribution is down and the shops are closed and that sort of thing.
Yeah, my our good friend Charlie Stickney had several conversations with the higher ups at Kickstarter. And what Kickstarter is saying is they right now have fewer comic projects than they ever have, all-time low. However, the number of donors to be has not gone down. The fan base is still there, still looking to donate, on the website every day. And so Kickstarter is putting out like an all-out APB. Like this is literally the best time to run a Kickstarter that has ever existed. Basically, that might be hyperbole, but not as much as you would think. And so yeah, I mean, to your point, David, finding other ways to kind of get your work out there, and we've reached this point too where the stigma of doing Kickstarter has gone away. Maybe a few years ago, if your book was on Kickstarter, a publisher was going to touch it with a 10-foot pole. That's not the case anymore. Charlie's book, White Ash, is with Scout Comics now. Avallone did the Kickstarter thing, and everyone and their brother wanted to publish that thing. It is that is the interesting thing. I mean, this is another panel, and Avallone, I know I cut you off, so I'll let you go. And just...
I was actually about to say the Kickstarter thing. I was actually about to and talk about how that's a smart. I think that's a smart way to try something right now and keep moving forward. And echoing what everyone else is saying is the more material you can have ready when the world comes back online, the better. Obviously, I mean, we don't want to beat ourselves up for not working hard while the world is ending, but by the same token, you know, if you were pumping out the pages before the world ended, keep pumping them out, and you'll have it. I mean, I'm in the middle of writing a thing for Dynamite, and they gave me a pencils down on it, I think about a month ago, and I have 2 issues left. But I really want to have those issues done so that when they say pencils up, I can say, here are those 2 scripts and pay me, because you know they're done. Because what the hell else did I have to do with my time for the last 3 months? But also, Sean, tell me more about that Mouse on Mars thing. That sounds.
He's big. He's a really big mouse. He's just bigger than other mice. That's the main thing. That's basically what I'm up to.
Cash standing by just for that.
Yeah, and you know, building on some points that have been made, you know,
this is the art. This is all the art for it.
No, but
yeah.
Avallone is talking about pencils down at Dynamite, and you know, you have pencils down everywhere. And Evil David was talking about a lot of artists being out of work and kind of just looking for anything and everything. The first thing I did when all these pencils down orders went out was I started making phone calls and writing emails. And I have, you know, I mean, I have 2 Dynamite artists drawing for me right now because, you know, Dynamite doesn't have any work for them. And so, you know, and so they're looking for something, and you know, and they like my work, I like their work. We've been flirting with each other for a couple of years right now, and I knew they had the time, and I wanted to be first in line. And so yeah, I mean, there's that's the way to look at it, and that's what I'm hearing kind of between the lines from you guys, is that there is even though this time sucks, you know, I mean, there's a lot of trouble and a lot of strife, and you know, there are going to be a lot of casualties here that we'd rather not see. In any catastrophe, there is also a lot of opportunity, and I don't want to. Maybe I'm the evil David by saying something like that. But I think, you know, I think what you guys are all saying is that we all need to find a way to kind of polish this turd, right? There is a way to navigate these waters, and it takes a little more thought and a little more care. But there's a way, and I think that, you know, what panels like this and you know, I mean, we're all friends here. I mean, I think the listeners are getting that, those watching the stream, is that comics is a team sport, right? You know, we all do this together. We all lift each other up. I was talking with Avallone about this, and I think we subscribe to the same philosophy, where it's like, if a door opens for me,
just slam in his face, right?
Yes. If a door opens,
you just knock it right off.
If a door opens for me, the first thing I do is try and jam 12 of my friends through it along with me. And so, and I think that the people that subscribe to that sort of philosophy are gonna do well in all this. I think we're all gonna lift each other up. And again, that's what this con is about, right? There are people in need right now. We're raising awareness for shops and people who are kind of in trouble because of this situation. And you know, again, I try to bring it back around to the thematics. I'm tacking them on at the end like a hack, but we're doing that. So we are. I mean, this was great, and we are running out of some time here. I think we should probably just go around and let us know where we can find you, what you got going on, all that stuff. So let's start at the top with Evil David.
You can find me on Twitter at David Booher, on Instagram at David M. Booher. Canto you can find on Twitter and Instagram at Canto Comic. And coming on the pike is a Direct Comics floppy series that hasn't been announced yet, that was pushed to 2021. So I know plus Canto stuff has been pushed on the line, so I know that 2021 is going to be basically the new 2020 for stuff coming out. And so, like, I think it was Pepose and Avallone said, you're pitching for 22, 23, 24. And then I'm talking about some all ages kids stuff going to the graphic novel book directly to the book market.
Cool. Medium David / Frank.
I'm on Twitter, Instagram. Everything's just my name at Frank Gogol, one word, FrankGogol. No Heroine's coming out eventually. Supposed to come out in June. We'll see what happens. So far, I've heard July. So, but it's in previews now, and if your shop is taking pre-orders, I guess try.
Issue 1 is kick-ass, guys. I got a preview copy. And
Mark Millar, man. It's Mark Millar.
All right. Sean, what do you got for us? I'm tripping here.
At Sean Chris Lewis. Bliss comes out from Image sometime in the summer, I think. And then after that, a book will come out from Vault, I think. And I'm working with Hayden Sherman on a new book that will maybe come out after that. We'll see. Thanks.
Good, David?
Yeah. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at PeposeD. You can also subscribe to my monthly newsletter, Pep Talks, at bit.ly/pepnews. And you can also follow Spencer and Locke on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Spencer and Locke. It's one word, all spelled out. And Going to the Chapel, it's just Go to the Chapel on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And I got a few books down the pipeline, none of which have been announced yet, but haven't gotten that pencils down order yet. So hopefully 2021, 2022, things will start to trickle out.
And Evilist David.
I was in the middle of writing an Elvira series, which will probably come out at some point, but I don't know when. There also might be a Dynamite Kickstarter starting soon. That's a question mark I'm waiting to hear on. And next weekend is Alt Free Comic Books Day, and we're going to be giving away the first chapter of Drawing Blood, and we're going to actually start selling the first trade paperback of Drawing Blood digitally that weekend.
Okay, and so you're doing the Alt Free Comic Book Day on Facebook with Russell Noelty?
Yeah. I'll be there too.
Yeah, I'll be doing a Drawing Blood panel at 9 a.m. on that Saturday. I think that's May 2nd. And then offering the book for sale and giving away the first chapter, which is awesome, if I do say so myself. Art by Ben Bishop, art by Kevin Eastman, art by Troy Little. So it's a pretty amazing lineup. Forget the hack writer who gave us to draw. And all my stuff can be found at the imaginatively named Avallone freelance.com.
Let me plug Drawing Blood. It's great. I'm still waiting for you to allow me to shop the film rights, but that's a conversation offline. Yeah.
Yes, that is. Can there be a large mouse on Mars as part of the story? Because I think that's really got something.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I think we bring that drawing in, and we'll sell it to Universal in a second.
It sells itself, really.
Pepose, what do you have going on for Alt Free Comic Book Day?
Yeah, I'll be promoting the first issue of Going to the Chapel. We're giving that away for all Alt Free Comic Book Day. And I believe I'll be speaking at 11 a.m. Pacific on Saturday. I'll be doing a one-on-one with Russell, so I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, Alt Free Comic Book Day is an event on Facebook. It has its own page. What are the dates on it? It's next weekend.
Yeah, it's next weekend, next Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, it's like 30 plus creators or something like that, all giving away free digital issues and doing AMAs. I'll be doing an AMA also. I don't have that info in front of me, and my internet is so weird right now that I'm worried that if I look it up, everything will crash again. But I will be there. We will be there. So everybody check that out. It's if you enjoyed this thing this weekend, we got more comics and more craziness going on next weekend. So join that. And Russell Noelty is a great follow on social media. He's always he's a wealth of knowledge and great information. He is a panel every day. So I am Rylend Grant. I am at Rylend Grant, as you can see, kind of down there on all forms of social media. So give me a follow. Banjax and Aberrant are available in fine comic shops everywhere, and for download via Amazon and Comixology. But you should really go to your comic shop and order it. Yeah, I think that's pretty much our time. I assume somebody's gonna kick his or her way in pretty soon. If not, there we go.
Hey,
Alec.
awesome job, guys. That was a really great conversation.
So Avallone and I were talking about this. I don't know if you heard the stream, but I think that you won the like Apocalypse Beard Challenge.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying? Like, because I saw you in Baltimore Comic Con, and I think you were pretty clean cut.
I mean, maybe it was a little bit shorter, but I've had a long, yeah. I mean,
okay,
it's definitely quarantined a bit.
Yeah, but it's like there's this competitive thing going on online, like quarantine beards, and I feel like you've won, like you've shut the competition down. I'm very proud of you.
I appreciate that. I did have a head start, so it's a bit cheating, but I'll take it.
Yeah, well, a win is a win.
Yeah,
anyway you get there. That's what Bill Belichick
especially these
says.
days.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. That was a great conversation, guys.
Excellent.